everyone, I'm Glamourina Lune, in case you're new here. I'm starting a new series today all about vampires. I love vampires. They have been an obsession of mine since as far back as I can remember. When I was really little, about I'd say 4 or 5 years old, I learned about vampires and I was actually terrified of them. They were my biggest fear of all time. I was sure that they were going to come get me as I slept. I would sleep with the blankets all the way up to my chin, covering my neck, because I thought that way vampires could not find me and they would not suck my blood. And then my fear of them quickly turned into obsession. So all of my life I've devoured anything I could about vampires, whether it was books, movies, TV, all of it. I even have a tattoo on my hip that is a vampire male. So yeah, you could say I'm pretty darn obsessed with them. So, let's step into the darkness and explore the myth of the seductive vampire. So today I wanted to talk about Mercy Brown. When I first heard her story years ago, I was just completely taken with it. This idea of, I guess when I think of vampire myth and lore, I either think something that is so far back, you know, medieval times or just folklore type tales, or I think of something along the lines of Anne Rice. But this was the first time I read a story that has been recorded in history. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about Mercy Brown, and let's see if we think that it is a myth or if Mercy Brown really did walk the earth after death. So back in the late 1800s, George and Mary Brown settled into Exeter, Rhode Island with their children. They were happy for a time, life was great, but unfortunately in the 1880s, Mary fell ill and she did die. Soon after that, in about 1888, their eldest daughter, Mary Olive, fell ill and she died as well. Then, in 1890, Edwin, their only son, fell ill. Now, he did not die as quickly as his mother and sister. He went ahead and he lived with the illness and doctors couldn't figure out how to help him. Of course, there are some things about this story that now living in modern times we can look at a little differently, and I will get into that at the end of this tale, but I want to go ahead and just talk about it, and then we will get into how we can prove that this might not be supernatural, but we'll get into that a little later in this video. So Edwin, he did fall ill, and what happened with this illness is it just looked like if they were being consumed by something. The life was being drained out of them. Fatigue, coughing up blood, they were just wasting away. It is 1890 when he falls ill, and he's living with this illness and he decides to go to Colorado Springs. He has heard that there is rarefied air and mineral water in Colorado Springs that has these healing properties. So he goes there. He spends about 18 months trying to get better and to find a cure for his illness, but he does not find one. Homesick and exhausted and tired, he returns home to his father and his sister Mercy. Now at this time when he has arrived, Mercy is sick as well. She is suffering from those same symptoms as her mother and older sister and Edwin. She lives with it for about a year before she ends up dying as well. So by this time, poor George, his entire family is just dying in front of him. All he has left is his son Edwin, who is so close to death. Doctors have tried everything to help him, but they can't figure out what's wrong. And at this time, you know, you have to remember that there's only so much that they can do medically, and there isn't the knowledge that we have now. So soon everybody is whispering and talking, and they think that it is actually something supernatural happening to this poor boy. And at this time, there is something that is known as the New England vampire panic. All around that area, people felt that there were vampires among them and that they were the ones that were taking the people that they loved and draining them of life. There were sightings, there were all sorts of things happening to try to keep this at bay, which I will get into in a moment. So when Mercy dies in 1892, everyone around George has decided that it is something supernatural. They do believe that it is either Mary, George's wife, Mary Olive, the eldest daughter, or Mercy that is indeed draining poor Edwin of his life force and possibly roaming around feeding on all of the neighbors and residents of this town. They decide to go ahead and that they want to go ahead and exhume all of the bodies. Now at first George is adamant that he does not want this to happen. Of course, nobody wants to dig up their wife and children and have to see them in that way again. He doesn't believe that it's anything supernatural or it's a vampire or anything like that. but he is desperate by this time, and grief does things to you. So he is desperate by this time, and he agrees to allow them to do this. So they exhume his wife's body. They believe that if they find blood inside the heart of the person who is deceased, then that means that they are a vampire. So they exhume her body. She is very decomposed by this time. There is no blood in her heart. Okay, so it's not her. Then they go to Mary Olive, the eldest daughter that had passed right after her mother, and exhume her body, check her heart. No blood, so it is not her. Then they go to Mercy. Now, Mercy had passed away in the winter, so it was freezing temperatures, and accounts differ here. Some people believe that she was not ever buried in the ground because it was so cold, the ground had to thaw out before they could actually bury her and dig a grave. So they believe that she was kept in an above ground grave or crypt, and she had been entombed there. So if she had done that, then obviously it would be very easy if she was a vampire to get out of it and roam the streets. So it's either that, or some other people believe that she was indeed buried. So either way, they get her from her resting place. When they do see Mercy's body for the first time after 9 weeks of her being dead, they notice that she has not decomposed hardly at all. Her nails have continued to grow. She looks, by all accounts, almost alive. So that already terrifies the people of the town. And then when the doctors check her heart, they do find blood in it. This sends the town into a panic. They believe that Mercy is one of the undead, and she is ready to roam the town and take the lives of everyone she sees. Some residents even say that they have seen her after dark roaming around. So everyone is terrified, and they believe that the only way to save poor Edwin and make sure that she does not come back, Mercy, is to extract her heart and burn it, and from the ashes they would make a concoction. They got water and poured the ashes in that, mixed it together, and they gave it to Edwin. They believed that it took consuming the heart of the undead, the one that was draining the life force of the person that was still living and suffering, that if they went ahead and they consumed it, that they would get better. So they give this to Edwin. They bury Mercy again. By now they believe that she is fully dead. There is no way she is coming back. And they give him the concoction. Unfortunately, it does not work, and Edwin passed 2 months after this. So this is pretty much where the story ends of Mercy Brown, but it is one of the most notorious American stories of vampirism, and I just find it completely interesting. Now we know that all of the things that Edwin and his mother and Mercy and Mary Olive, all of them around this time were suffering from TB, tuberculosis, or consumption, as it was known at that time. It was something that was very widespread and people didn't know how to handle it, and so these stories of vampirism happen. It's up to you to decide whether you think it is just a way for people who were terrified of a disease that they knew nothing about, if it was a way for them to justify it in their mind. Or is it really a case of the supernatural? Maybe these people were fighting vampires. Maybe it was this epidemic of vampires and families perishing because of it. Maybe history has just rewritten it so that we no longer have to think about it and we all justify and rationalize it. Who knows? So it's up to you to decide what you think about this, but no matter what, it is an interesting case. You can actually still visit Mercy's grave today in Exeter, Rhode Island as well. So that's all for today. Join me next time for another tale of death, blood, and the supernatural. Bye everyone.